Let me show you demo on static partitioning first on managed and external tables. Then I will show you dynamic partitioning on managed tables, and then we'll conclude this hands-on demo with bucketing. So I have already set the Hive metastore warehouse directory to be S3. The reason I have done it because I logged out of the previous session. I'm using the Hive database 1, and I already have a few tables here: card sales data and card sales data external S3. Till here it is the exact same command that we had used earlier to create managed tables. A few things I have added is this particular keyword partition by, and if you see, the partitioning column is model year whose data type is integer. We have model year in the table also. The reason we'll have to define model year in the table is because I have data for model year in our CSV files, but I will not allow me to create this table because it is telling you column repeated in partitioning columns, meaning I have this model year here and I have this model year in the partitioned by clause also. So I cannot have the same column in two different places. So when I mentioned partition by the column name, Hive by default includes this column in the table definition itself. So how do I solve this? The way to solve this is change the name of this model year. I have changed it to model underscore year. But remember, when you query the table after creating it as a partition table, do not use the model year as model underscore YR and as here in the where clause. Always use model year because that will actually do the partition pruning. Model underscore YR will not do partition pruning. It will go ahead and scan the entire table. So now I should be able to create the table. It is done. Now if I type show partitions card sales data part, it will not show me any partitions because I have not added the partitions. If you remember in the theory, I mentioned that we have to add the partitions manually one by one. So that's what I have to do now. But before adding the partitions, I want to show you that I have divided this file card sales data.csv into multiple files, and each one of them have data with model year as mentioned, meaning that this file has data where model year is 2013, this file has data where model year is 2003, and so on. I have not created all the files because the number of years are pretty high. Now what I'll do is I will go ahead and load these files to the individual partitions, and this is the command. You are familiar till this part. I'm loading from a local file system. The file is card sales data 2003, not the card sales data. And here after the table name, I'm mentioning the partition, and the partition is model year equal to 2003, meaning I'm adding data to this particular partition. So the data has been added. Now if I do a show partitions, you'll see, as you can see, I have loaded data for all the 5 partitions. If I run show partitions command, it should show me the 5 partitions that I have loaded. Let me do a select star. As I have not mentioned the partition key in the where clause, it is going ahead and scanning all the partitions. Again, we have very less number of partitions, so that's why it did not take much of time. So imagine that this particular table car sales data part is a few terabytes in size. Imagine the time that would take. So now how do you fix it? How do you make sure that whenever anyone runs query in a partition table, the where clause should contain the partition column? That's where you have to set Hive MapReduce mode to strict. So if I set Hive MapReduce mode to strict and run the same SQL statement, select star from card sales data part, I'm not giving the partition clause in the partition key in the where clause, so it will give me error that no partition predicate was specified. So if I have to run it, I'll have to mention the partition column in the where clause. In this case, I have mentioned model underscore year. So now it has selected records from the partition where we have data only for 2013. So as I've set Hive MapReduce mode to strict, even if I use model underscore YR equal to 2013, it should give me error because model underscore YR is not part of partition column. So make sure you set this particular configuration, Hive map reduce mode to strict. It enforces you to follow the best practice in partitioning tables. If you have to drop a partition, this is how you drop the partition using alter table, drop partition and mention the value using the partition column 2013. And now if I type show partitions, it should not show me the partition with 2013. So as you can see, it is gone. Alright, so let me go ahead and create an external partitioned table. And this is the command. The only thing that I have added is the keyword external. Here I have changed the model year to model underscore year, and in the partitioned by clause I have mentioned model year int. As you can see, I have not mentioned location here because we'll be adding the location as part of partition alteration or as part of adding the partitions. So if I press enter, the external table has been created. And what I have done in S3 is that I have created one additional folder, car sales data external partition location. So if you click on this, I have these three different folders. 2003, where I have the CSV file which contains data with model year 2003. Similarly, I have 2008, which also has the CSV file which contains data from model year 2008 and 2013. So I'll have to go ahead and add these locations as partitions. And this is the command, alter table card sales data external part add partition, and I'm mentioning the partition value. Model year is 2003, and here I am using the location clause. So if I enter, this partition has been added. Let me go ahead and add the other two partitions also. I have added all the partitions, and Hive map reduce mode is still set to strict. Let me go ahead and try to run a select star without adding the partition column in the where clause. So as you can see, I'm getting the exact same error that no partition predicate has been mentioned. So the behavior is same for both external tables and managed tables. So if you set Hive map reduce mode to strict, it will work for all type of partition tables, whether it is managed or external, and whether it is static or dynamic. If I put the partition column in the where clause, it is fetching me the records for that particular partition itself. And if I use model underscore YR, it should give me the same error that it was giving for managed table. So as you can see, no partition predicate for alias was mentioned. Alright, so let me go ahead and show you something in the output, which is same for both managed tables and external tables. So I'm selecting only one record. So if you see, the model year, which is the partition column, is coming at the end, and at the same time I have the model underscore YR also. So till here it is coming from file, and this is the partition which has been created as a folder, either in case of managed table or partition table. So while selecting, you can actually should not select model underscore YR, which is not part of partition column. Now I'll show you how to create dynamic partition tables. So I'll only take example of managed tables. I'll not use external tables because it is more or less similar. Before working on dynamic partition table, we'll have to set some configuration parameters. The first one is Hive exec dynamic partition. We'll have to set it to true. And the second parameter is Hive exec dynamic partition mode, which has to be set to non-strict. These are the two configuration parameters that you should set. Again, I'm setting at session level only. When you work in production, and if you wish to work on dynamic partitions, you'll be setting this to true permanently using the JSON file in EMR, which I'll show you later on. Now I'm creating this table, car sales data partition dynamic. Nothing changes, everything is same. If you see, the partition by is model year, row format delimited, fields terminated by comma, stored as text file. Also, the actual model year has been named as model underscore YR. So the definition is exactly same. Now what I'll do is that I will load this table using an insert statement. I cannot use load command to load a dynamic partition table because As you know, load command will just copy the file from one location to another. It will not check the partition definition or anything as such. So I'll use the insert command to load the dynamic partition table. But before that, as you already know, we have these many tables that we have created in as part of this demo. So cart sales data already has some records. Now what I'll do is that I'll insert records in cart sales data part dynamic from cart sales data. So I'll select records from here and insert it here to see how many partitions get created. The insert statement is a little different. We have the insert into command, and then the partition keyword is a little different. I'm just putting the partition column, not any value for that partition column. And if you see the select statement, this is also a little different. The reason I'm doing this is because when you create this partition table with the partition by clause, the table gets created with additional column, which is the partition column. So if you see, I have both model underscore YR and model underscore ER as part of the column set. And if I run the insert column without the model year, it will give me error saying that the table has 17 columns, but the query select star has only 16 columns. So that's why I'll have to mention model year also. So this statement should create a task of taste dags. The taste dag would run and it will insert data into the table. It took some time, but the table got loaded. Let me try to, sorry, I loaded the wrong table. It should be car sales data underscore part underscore dynamic. I loaded car sales data underscore part. That also worked because I'm working with dynamic partitioning now. The load statement is not needed anymore to load car sales data underscore part. So I have run the insert statement again. The table has been loaded and I'm running the select star from cart sales data part dynamic command. So it has selected 5 records. Now the reason it has selected because I have not set Hive map reduce mode to strict. If I set it to strict and I run the select statement again, obviously it will give me error. So as you know that the behavior is same for both static partitioning and dynamic partitioning. If I run with model year, which is the partition column, it will show me the values. Now let us go ahead and take a look at the partitions of this particular table. Now as you can see, the number of partitions are very high because these are the distinct model year values in the file or in the table. So that's why it has created so many partitions. So as you can see, I did not have to mention the partition individually because I'm using dynamic partition. The table got loaded automatically and the value and the records got added to the corresponding partitions automatically. So I did not have to do anything. If I go to S3, I should be able to see this table, which is cart sales data part underscore dynamic. So as you can see, there are so many partitions that have been created and each partition has one file which corresponds to the record for that particular partition. So if I go back and select one more partition, let's say model year 2010, it would also contain only one file which would contain data with model year 2010. So that's about dynamic partitioning. Now let me go ahead and do a small demo on bucketing. Bucketing is pretty straightforward. I have already told you what bucketing is. I'll go ahead and create one more table. Name of the table is cart sales data part underscore bucket, and I have partitioned by keyword followed by model year integer, but I have an additional keyword clustered by, and the clustered by is by product ID, and also it mentions into 4 bucket, meaning that each partition would have 4 buckets. The records in each partition would be put into 4 different buckets. Now if a partition has, let's say, less than 4 records, then obviously it cannot be put into 4 buckets. It will, let's say if there's only 1 record, it will be put in 1 bucket. If there are 2 records, it will be put in 2 buckets. So any partition which has more than 4 records, all those records would be distributed across 4 buckets. Now, what is a bucket in this case? Bucket is nothing but a file. As you have already seen that I have loaded this particular table with dynamic partition, and in each partition has only one file. But if I bucket the same table and mention the number of buckets, there should be 4 files. So let me go ahead and create this table. The table has been created, and I'm using the same insert statement to load table into car sales data bucket. It will insert using dynamic partitioning. So one more table should be created. Now we'll see that each partition would have 4 files rather than one file. The table has been loaded, and as you can see, just like the previous one, multiple partitions have been created for this table also. Now let me go ahead and take a look at S3, how these partitions have been created, what are there inside of these partitions. So this is the folder car sales data underscore part underscore bucket. If I click on this, I should be able to see multiple partitions. If I go to any of the partitions, it should show me that there are 4 files instead of 1. So as you can see in this folder model year 2013, there are 4 files because the table was created with 4 buckets in each partition. Let me take a look at a different partition, let's say 1982. As you can see, there are 3 partitions because maybe the number of records are less. There might be only 3 records. Let us go ahead and take a look at another partition, let's say 1999. Here we have 4 files, meaning these are 4 different buckets. So that's what buckets are. And when you create a table or a partition using buckets, the records in that particular table or in that particular partition would be divided across those many number of files. And the way it would be put, the value of the bucketing key would be modulo with the number of partition, and the remainder would be actually the partition number. And that's what bucketing is. Before closing this hands-on section, I wanted to show you the glue catalog. So I have created multiple partition tables: car sales data part, car sales data part bucket, and car sales data part dynamic. Accidentally, I created a car sales data part dynamic in the default database also. You can ignore it. Let me go ahead and show you what information glue catalog stores for the partition tables. So if I take a look at car sales data partition, this is the table and location. I have already shown you this earlier. So here in the schema, if you see, the model underscore YR is shown and model underscore year is also shown as a partition because it is a partition key. I have used only one partition key, that's why it is showing partition 0. Had I used one more partition key, it would have shown you partition bracket 1. If you go to partitions, it will show you all the partitions that have been created. So I have loaded this table with dynamic partition. So that's why it is showing you the partition details. I have multiple partitions as per model here, and it will also show you the files for that particular partition. So for example, for 1994, if you click on view files, it will take you to the S3 location where the file for partition model year 1994 would be stored. So this is for the partition file. Similarly, there's no difference between static partitioning and dynamic partitioning. In case of dynamic partitioning also, it will show you more or less similar information. So if you click on partitions here, it will show you all the partitions that are there. These are the partitions, and if you click on view files, similarly it will take you to the location where the file for this particular partition model year 1971 is stored. Let's take a look at the bucketed file. Click on part underscore bucket, and if we see the partitions, it's similar. We have multiple partitions here. Let's take a look at the view files. Now here I should be able to see 4 files than 1. So in this case, it is showing me 4 files. So these are the information glue catalog stores for various partitioned and bucketed tables.